follow the export regulations, which then means that we have to use, in my case, Spanish on a daily basis. We have to make sure that all of our translations are correct, because a lot of our countries require bilingual translations to Spanish. We also have to know exactly what documents are required to ship outside the country. So if it is like a health certificate or a label or any additional documentation to prove where the pork is from, because different countries have different requirements. I actually have to use Spanish on a daily basis. I have customers that don't speak any English at all, so I have to speak to them in Spanish. And so it's a lot easier if you actually speak the language versus using, say, Google Translate to do that, because Google Translate at the end of the day isn't always right. I also have sales managers that don't speak any English as well, so to even be able to communicate with sales to understand what the customer bought, we have to go and do that in Spanish as well. Do you have any questions about like what we do? Because we can also, I was also going to talk about, so I learned Spanish by taking Spanish in high school. I took AP Spanish, took the AP test and all of that. I also then took a gap year after high school and lived in Mexico for a year and did an extra year of high school to learn Spanish. And then also in college, I majored in Spanish, and then I also studied abroad for a year in Spain. Because I think sometimes a great way to learn the language is to actually live and go to school with native speakers, because it's different than just sometimes what you learn in your Spanish class. So all of my experience in learning Spanish has also made it easier to find a job, because sometimes they'll go and look at you and say, okay, she speaks Spanish, now we don't have to worry about some of the other things that we were worried about her knowing, because we can teach that rather than trying to teach Spanish. So Tatiana.
Hello there, I'm Tatiana. I'm actually Andrea's manager, and I was the one that hired her, and when we posted this position, it was a Spanish-speaking position. I will tell you, we had multiple people come in and say, hey, I speak Spanish, but when I sat down with this girl, I was like, okay, talk to me in Spanish, tell me everything about you, and she just went for it, and honestly, she didn't have as much international experience as we could have had, but just by her speaking Spanish, we were able to overlook everything else, because we can teach her everything else that the job called for. But Spanish is a skill that you absolutely need, especially in today's world. What do you say?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it puts such a competitive edge to everything, every job nowadays. For example, I grew up speaking Spanish because I'm originally from Colombia, and I will tell you, every job I've ever had has required Spanish, and easily I have made $4 or $5 over the average paying of every other employee just because I knew Spanish. So learning Spanish, I would definitely say, is everything, or not just Spanish, but just the second, third language is everything that you truly need in today's world. Any questions or anything that you guys specifically want to know about? Anything?
Have you gotten to travel because of your job?
We have absolutely got, you want to tell them about yours?
Last year I went to Belize to meet some of our customers because of the job that I have. And then you've also...
I've gotten to travel to China, absolutely. We have different offices all over the world. So we have one in China, we have one in Korea, we have one in Japan, now we have one in Colombia. So really getting to talk to our customers, our salespeople all over the world. And like Andrea was saying earlier, sometimes we'll have to write letters for our customers, custom agents that we have to write letters, very much official letters for. So those are all things that we get to do in our job. Another thing, I actually brought examples that I'm happy to share with everybody. One of the requirements for Colombia, Central America, is putting together bilingual labels for the boxes of the product. If you don't have this bilingual label, the product actually cannot be imported into the country. So we have actually gone through, looked at the regulations. Oh, sorry about that. We have gone through, looked at the regulations that you find for the countries, USDA, and we put together bilingual labels, and those are placed on each individual box. So you'll go through what product is it? Is it, pork boneless, butter, whatever it may be. You have to go in and translate it, where the product's coming from, production dates, expiration dates, and so on. So we literally had to put all of this together after reading countries' regulations, which are clearly in Spanish.
You guys have questions? I'm going to keep asking questions.
actually need to know?
I'm so sorry.
How many languages do you actually use and know because of your job?
So we ship all over the world, but specifically for her market, it's actually Spanish because she's in charge of Central South America.
And then we also have some people who speak Chinese because they're working with the Chinese market, and the Chinese market also requires bilingual labels.
Yep. So specifically right now, I mean, we have, again, offices in Japan, we have Korea, we have one in Colombia, Mexico, we have a Mexico office, we have a China team. So really, if you just know that second language, that will put you above everybody else.
Did either of you have to do any kind of testing or crediting to prove your Spanish?
No, we didn't, and I know Spanish, so then I was able to interview her in Spanish. When I got hired on as well, I was able to actually interview with somebody that already spoke Spanish, but I also, when I went through Maple Woods for my first 2 years, they do have a program, which is a translation program. So I was able to go through that and get accredited, so that actually looks really good when you have your resume. I was actually able to test out of all my Spanish in college, so that helped out a lot. I got 12 credits just for knowing Spanish and being able to test through the system.
And then I majored in Spanish as well, not just a minor, so.
Right, so just by having that on paper, it helps out a lot, absolutely.
Do you think it's better to have the major or the minor in Spanish? Because you said you had or there's an
It depends on, I guess, what credits you need to take. It happened to be that I tested so far ahead in Spanish because I'd come back from my year in Mexico that it made more sense to major in Spanish because I was able to test out of so many classes. And then also at the high school I went to, we had dual credit classes where we could get high school and college credit. So I also had some dual credits. So it's really up to what options you have available and what you're able to test into.
Are there certain products that are not sold here in the United States that people in other countries want? A different way of doing the thing or something?
Yeah, okay, sorry. So, pretty much we export everything that the United States won't eat. So anything like the brains is actually one of the things that we export, or things that people normally wouldn't eat here, they eat it everywhere else. Like Andrea was saying, we're shipping currently about 46 million pounds a week of pork all over the world. Just to put it into perspective, one of our biggest plants, we slaughter about 32,000 hogs a day. That is just one of them. So just think about how much product we're exporting all over the world, especially now China. There's a huge swine flu, I don't know if you guys know about that, but it's killing most of their pork. So we are shipping about 26 million pounds of pork a week to China. So it is absolutely crazy how much we're shipping. International business just keeps growing and growing and growing, especially in today's world. Being able to experience those different cultures, you know, the way we talk to customers, the way we handle somebody in Korea versus the way that we handle somebody in Japan, you know, completely different. Or Andrea, you know, will tell you some of the experiences she has with Central South America customers, how she talks to them, you know, the time that you expect to get an answer back from somebody that's in Central South America versus somebody that, you know, it's in Japan. It's just their culture.
And I think definitely also, if you have the opportunity to study abroad in high school or college, it's a great way to learn how the culture functions, because I think that also helps in how my job works today, because I get where they're coming from because I've lived with them. It's not that I'm coming in with just an American mindset of, well, this is how we do things here. It's also, how do they function there, and how can I bridge the gap between how we have to work and how they prefer to work. And so sometimes you only get that experience by either making friends with foreign exchange students if you have them here, or by studying abroad yourself.
Any other questions?
So, I have a million.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, nobody else has a question for me. Okay, so you said that you did a city abroad in Spain and you went to high school in Mexico.
I did gap year in Mexico.
Okay. So have you, so because of your exposure to those two cultures, have you had any kind of a situation with, you said also Chile, you guys do business in, where you thought this is how they would react because they're Hispanic also, but oh no, that was totally different in Chile? Can you give us a story?
I think sometimes we think we know how customers will react to things, And at the end of the day, it may be a complete 180. I have a customer who actually is in Belize who we've had some things not go exactly how we planned, and I expected a really forceful response because sometimes I found that especially males in the Hispanic culture typically have a different response to things, and it was definitely much more laid back and it's okay, we'll just get through this, and it wasn't completely what I expected. Because my husband is Cuban too, so I live with a Hispanic every day, so.
I think a good example of different countries, even though it could be all within the same culture, translation of product descriptions. So here we are, one of our salespeople is in Mexico. She's working with us to make sure that we have the best product Spanish translation for this product code. We file it with USDA, we create the bilingual labels. Everything's going okay for Colombia, but then all of a sudden it's going to Chile. Oh, wait a second, but that's not the exact same thing here. So we do run into those things. So then we have to all work together, come up with the best translation that we can, because again, that also is legal stuff that we have to file here with USDA. So we do run into some of those things.
Okay, so what is the preferred term for bacon in the Hispanic country? Because we read a menu that was from Five Guys in Spain, and it had bacon, B-E-I-C-O-N, instead of like tocino or.
I mean, the way I see it in our translations is tocino. Yes, that's how we see it, and that's what we use.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So, but again, like you said, it could be different, and so a lot of the times we have to work with customers. Okay, this is how we have it filed. Please let us know if you'll be able to work with customs, or do we need to provide a letter, or do we truly need to change it to your country requirement to specifically be something else?
So let's say you are like with a customer, or not a customer, like you're having your sales pitch thing, and you don't know what they're talking about, like, cause she's saying like you go Chile, but then you're going somewhere else. Like, have you ever had where you didn't know like the right terminology to say? Or does that make sense? Because you said it's like all over, so like let's say you study right here, but you weren't aware of like, or do you prepare ahead of time to go? Does that make sense?
I mean, do you feel like you talk different to
So
customers?
I think that different customers sometimes use different words for things, but also having the ability to talk around a subject. So say there's this one word that even sometimes when I'm reading something, they'll use a term that I've never heard before. But by taking the context of everything around it, you can figure out what that one word is they're talking about. Or if they come back and you've told them something and they say, I don't understand what you're talking about. You think through, okay, they're telling me they don't understand this. How can I talk around that subject to get back to what they are trying to understand what I'm telling them? Because at the end of the day, it's even like in English. You go over to the UK and they may not always understand what you're telling them. So it's just learning how to talk around the words that you don't know.
And a lot of the times I would say it's okay to simplify things too. Like we bounce ideas of each other. So, sometimes we'll get this big official letter. This container is being rejected for this, and that. I mean, we literally have to sit together and start reading word by word, because some of those official words can literally be this long. So,
And it's words that you don't learn in Spanish class, or even going and working somewhere, because let's be honest, the official terminology even in English is much longer, bigger words than what you typically see on a daily basis. So it's really being able to, if you can understand around something, you can usually figure out what you have to do.
That's awesome. And there's a word for that we use in class sometimes. It's called circumlocution, walking around a thing that you don't know.
And I remember that very well from Spanish class, and it's like the best thing that you could probably take away from your Spanish class is being able to talk around something that you don't know how to say.
Do you have any just interesting stories of encounters with customers that you want to share?
I don't know.
Our customers at the end of the day aren't that much different than customers you typically encounter. So we don't typically have anything too crazy that will come up that you're just going, oh my gosh.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's official business. I think one of the funny things that we run into is just, like I said, the culture. We play a lot around, what goes on our resume, and we always say, I speak this specific culture just because everybody's so different. A Japanese customer, you can expect to have an answer, if you ask for it at 7 a.m., you'll have it by 6:59 in the morning. Versus, a Central South American customer, you can send multiple and multiple emails, and it's very acceptable to not have an answer for a week, or even when it comes down to payments. That's actually one of the things that we run into a lot is, we need to have this money by this specific day. They'll email you 2 weeks later, oh, I'm sorry, we'll make sure to get it to you, because it's just the culture, even talking about times, and it is what it is. So we do need to learn and work with the customers, or Korean, we need to make sure that you treat them, with respect. A lot of the words that you use with a Korean customer may not be the same, or, sometimes somebody in Central South America will send me a text message on my personal phone, and I had no idea how they got that, just because that's just how they are, more personable versus somebody else in a different country. Yes?
How big is the difference between communicating for business reasons rather than just conversation?
I would say, personally, that was my biggest issue that I had, just because I grew up speaking Spanish. It was street Spanish, it was family Spanish. So actually walking into a business environment, I had to learn a lot. So to me, that was a huge, huge gap. But I mean, you can learn.
You definitely use more formal Spanish in regards to usted instead of tú. So it's just sometimes thinking through, you want to go and say, why didn't you do that? And it's, well, can you please explain to me why you didn't do this? So
It is. It's completely different.
Do we have any more questions? I don't want to miss any opportunity for this question, but the bell's about to ring, and I don't want you to. Thank you so much for coming